Welcome to this edition of the Million Dollar Mastermind podcast. This is where we pick the brains of high achievers from all walks of life and get their hard-earned, real-world insights on winning. I'm your host, Larry Weidel. But the thing is, it never ends because, there is a principle that I am amazed more people in life have not accepted. And this is in every area of your life, grow or die, run or rust. And you're going to, you retire, now you're bored. Now you're going to try, it's just like, it's always going, if you're going to grow, you're going to have those challenges. If you're going to scale, okay, great. Well, if you scale up and you did it right, well-run companies grow. So you're going to have to scale again. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's right. Right. You're contracting or expanding, and it's really, there's no in between. It's like, it's right. One or the other.
Yeah. And one of the things that why you need outside help from time to time is the fact that a lot of times the people that are on the ground level that see the things that need to be done don't have the authority to speak up. And they certainly don't have the authority to come in and make a change and bring in this, that, and the other. And they know if they squeak too much, the squeaky wheel doesn't get the grease. The squeaky wheel gets fired, and just look at the history of whistleblowers in the country. And so the thing in all business and everything. And so if you go in there and you see things, you're at a level where you see stuff where you're more likely to see things because they're breaking down, they're not working, and realize we need this. Chances are that's a couple layers of management above you. And the person is in that position is already covered up with another 100 things they've got to do.
Yeah. That's right.
And you're lucky to even get their time. One time I talked to the CEO of our company, and decades ago did I stop feeding in a steady stream of new ideas and suggestions to him. I just gave up. But he said, Larry, let me explain this to you. He said, even when you give me an idea that I love, he said, it'll take me 18 months to get it installed. Yeah. By the time I get it through all the departments and the legal, we change the procedures and so there's a lot of times when you bring in an outside consultant or an outside person, they're empowered, right, with the idea to be able to get everybody's attention, make the suggestions, be taken seriously, and much more likely to be able to get the change implemented because the problem has already been recognized. Yeah. Because a lot of times when you bring it up, you're trying to say, this is a problem. This is what it is. But when they bring you in, they've already recognized this is a problem and you're the solution. So they're not geared up. The psychology of that is not to fight you and no, you guys are full of crap, stay out, and so they're more likely to be receptive and say, give you time to explain what you're talking about and actually get it implemented. How hard is it to go into the big companies and get these things implemented?
Initially, it was very hard. Initially, when we were first winning new logos and getting new customers, it was very tricky. We kind of had to force our way in. You have to be brave. You got to be able to call people and get through and get to top people and kind of sell your way through. But I noticed over more and more years here that we have a good reputation, and we really obsess over stellar products and a world-class customer experience. We talk about that internally all the time. And after a while, people talk, and so it's like we have a really good reputation, but you also have to be brave enough to go and call and reach out to help that person and then prove yourself, and we, going back to what you just said, the execution part, what you're really talking about is idea is one thing, execution is the other thing. And, after a while, when you prove yourself as someone who can execute and who can solve this challenge or help solve this problem, it is a sigh of relief for a lot of companies because we're all begging for that, right? Thank God you have somebody who has an idea, but also who can execute. And I think that that's a big part of what we're doing. And we get a lot of feedback and praise on that exact point. We survey customers after every single project and every single thing we're doing. We're always getting feedback. And
talk about feedback. Talk about running off of feedback to solve the problem and after you've implemented. Talk about feedback.
Yeah. So, I've always been very ambitious. The companies that I've loved have had a great customer experience or a great customer service culture. And I'm a finicky customer myself. And so I've thought about what I look for. So early days with Richter, we really put in little sort of checkpoints to get information from the customer and kind of like, how are we doing? And, sometimes people say, oh, it's great. But what we really often try and push for is where can we get some negative content? Where can we get some negative feedback and get something where we can actually improve and we can actually get better?
Yeah.
And make the experience better for them. And it's okay because we have thick skin. We're not going to be insulted. I want to make a world-class customer experience. I want to have a company that when they interact with us, it's a pleasure to work with us. So we've had little points in the process where we're getting feedback from them and we're sort of encouraging that feedback. And I think every company could do that. I've often said to people also, just on this line, I've said, think about the last 5 incredible companies that you work with that had a stellar customer experience. And I don't know what you think about, but I know that it's actually difficult to come up with 5 in many cases. And and when you think about that, you think, wow, that's amazing. There's so few great companies that have delivered a stunning customer experience.
Right.
And when you get that right, it stands out.
Yeah.
And so there's an element of like, in order to get that, you got to figure out what the feedback is. You got to fix those things that make people upset and frustrated. And,
for a company on the way up, how important, what are things, like, I feel like probably feedback and is a way of implementing earlier than you maybe thought about doing, but, systematizing it where it's a regular thing. It's not a sporadic type thing, but how would you, from your trip up the ladder, and I'm sure it's in your book too, but what can people learn about making a positive experience for their customers? What are the biggest 1, 2, 3 things?
Well,
if they want to be in that thing, a company that's thought of as, I just went through it with an interior designer right now, and I'll tell you, it's like, yes. I'm very skeptical early on. Some of the things, a personality grated on me a little bit, this, that, and the other, and then one thing and another. But then all of a sudden, no, I'm in. I do the next 5 projects with her. And so after going through the thing, is like she's proven. And so to get to that point, where do people blow it?
Well, I think it's 2 things. I think one is you got to talk to your customers.
Yeah.
Simple. Really everything does boil down to a simple solution. Like you can overthink it and get a little bit too complex, but fundamentally you have to talk to your customers, and you have to understand your customers, and you have to ask questions.
Yeah.
So you got to ask questions from the customer. And then secondly, you got to sort of dummy run it, right? Like you got to be the customer yourself. And create the flow from the start to the end, and go through it yourself and look at what does that experience feel like. And one of the things we did early days was we made Richter a customer of Richter, and so just treat it exactly like a customer and do the exact work that we do for our customers, but for Richter, and then follow it along and find the areas where it's frustrating. And one of the things in more recent years, in the last bunch of years, one thing I realized, for example, was I was in the airport and I got a baggage fee, and I was like, boy, I hate fees. I just hate fees. Like even if it doesn't matter what it is, I just don't. And I was like, man, I wish it was just baked into the thing, and I don't want to have to pull out the card or do any of that.
Right.
And we did have some fees for like edit fees and different things like that. So then that was another thing where I was like, I hate fees. They probably hate fees. Let's get rid of them.
Yeah.
So we got rid of fees, and sure enough, the feedback after doing that was like, people were like, oh, thank God, I hated that. It was such a nuisance. It was a small fee, but they added up, and it was a nuisance to PO and get approved. but they weren't saying it. They weren't telling us per se. So it was kind of an example of like sort of dummy running it myself, me being the customer and kind of going through and going, I hate those, or I hate this, and always looking at the process of like, what would make it better? What would make it better? So I think it's a combination of talking to the customer and then also kind of being the customer.
Yeah, that is really, really good insight. And there's no reason even small companies can't do that, right? I mean, you
100%.
Yeah. And that's where, that's where the logic comes in of a small company. Like you take your product and you go to your relatives, families, and friends and see how they use it, get their feedback. And, but anyway, when you go out there, is this business more competitive than you thought it would be? Or is it just unlimited opportunity out there?
I do think there's a huge amount of opportunity, and I rarely think about competition, to be honest. I'm so just focused on what we're doing. I rarely think about it, to be honest. Yeah.
And you haven't seen it come up. Do you pay attention to the leaders in your industry to kind of cherry pick ideas, things they're doing, and that, for models, for what do you lock into? I think I know the answer on this because we're going to go to your book here in a minute. But what do you go to for improvements?
Okay, so I do not pay attention to what competition is doing for ideas, because I think if you do that, you're always going to be behind.
Yeah.
We talk to our customers, and when you talk to the customer, you're having sales calls or any types of calls, you got to ask a lot of questions. And when you have those questions, you're going to have opportunity to solve problems. And you have to be very good at solving problems. So a lot of your product ideas and service ideas are going to be coming from talking to customers that understand and challenges the problems they're dealing with. And from that, you're going to have ideas. The other thing I'm just going to say, which is kind of random, but I run every day, and I go for a run at the end of the day, and it often frees me up. And I think about a lot of ideas when I run, and then I come back and do stuff, and I don't know. I don't know what to say other than there's definitely a correlation to sort of extroverting and then diving in. Right. And I think things like running can be a great way to sort of generate ideas. And I tell people, I think you should be generating ideas every day, because it's kind of something where it's like you condition yourself to be able to problem solve and be able to come up with ideas, have your moleskin, have a journal, write ideas, force yourself to do that. And after a while, it'll just come to you, more and more will come to you.
Well, and what I tell people is like, you don't have to improve enough. Right now, you're not challenged with improving for the rest of your life and to be 10 times bigger. All you should be focused on as a leader right now is how can you keep growing? Yeah. And so usually that's related, in my experience, to bottlenecks. If you got a business that's flowing, that's successful, as it swells up, usually doesn't swell up equally across, and so wherever the bottleneck is, try and deal with that, make that better. And then then the flow, then it backs up at another point. Well, then fix that, But if you're improving by 0.1% a month, even that's going to add up huge over a month. But if you're improving 1% a month,
100%,
and like you said, there's big companies, there's all kind of areas, all kind of departments. Well, in every company, there's all kind of things you do that have to be done. Yeah. And pretty much everything you do can probably be done a little bit better. You 100%. Don't have to get a lot better, but it's just like, how can, and it's like you fall into the quicker, faster, better model. Is like, what would be quicker? What would be that? Because that makes it more fun. When, the one way, even routine business, every kind of exciting activity is going to have some element of repetitive routine in it.
Sure.
And the way you keep the excitement up is to increase your efficiency, get your times down. And they ask, like Mia Hamm, she was the big female soccer player, University of North Carolina, and the Olympics and everything. And she would have it like you got your moleskin there. They said, what did you do on your like May 10th, 76 or whatever like that? She went and got the journal out and this, that, and the other. This was the off season. Okay. This was off season where she said, I did 8 50-yard sprints. I did this, that, and the other. She had like 12 things down like that. And what she was trying to do was she was challenging herself, to refine her technique but specific things to work on. So that would get better. Even Sting, not Sting, but Slash, the guitarist, he was talking about, he looks like a big clown, but actually, he's not a big clown. He works at playing the guitar. He loves it. But he said he was playing one riff on YouTube, and he said, somebody showed me this, and he said, for the life of me, I could not play this riff, He said, but, the next day I could. He said, now I use it as warm-up every day.
Wow. Yeah, and I think many of the greats are like that. When you study enough greats, whether it's the Mia Hamm or the Slash or the, whoever, generally speaking, that is the trend. They are like that. They're constantly trying to improve. They're constantly trying to get better. It doesn't matter, how much money, how much fame. None of that really matters. It's really the pursuit of greatness, the pursuit of improvement, the pursuit of getting better. And it's like Nike says, there is no finish line, and so right. That's what's true for me as well.
And it's one thing to stay in the game, but it's another thing to stay in the game and enjoy it. And right. To be, it's where you're refreshing yourself. Thanks for listening to the Million Dollar Mastermind. If you felt there were any valuable takeaways from this episode, please take a minute and leave us a 5-star review. Your feedback is important and really helps us get the word out to a wider audience. Remember, we have a valuable webinar that is absolutely free. Register for it right now at weidelonwinning.com. Thanks for listening.